Hello and welcome to Talks. We're back again after a bit of a break. Not our fault, we just had very busy schedules, as most people do. But I am joined today by Lois and our editor Tom as well. So thank you both for joining me.
Pleasure.
You didn't introduce me correctly, Kim.
Well, I was gonna say... Well, they know who you are and they know
He's a
they're...
veteran on this.
Yeah,
Like,
and you're probably going to give some ridiculous job title, so I was just trying to circumvent that.
The
at the
queen
beginning.
of money marketing.
Yeah, see.
Joined by the king.
As said by Lucy Porter.
And
our
I'm
awards.
the emperor, so let's continue.
Fine.
So yeah, like I said, we've had quite a busy couple of months, and only set to get busier. So, but looking forward to the end of the year. So I guess I wanted to start with consolidation talk.
Sounds good.
And as our consolidation queen, Lois, you've been covering consolidation since we both started around the same time at Money Marketing. So you recently brought up that the FCA has recently announced it wants to do a review on consolidation. So what do you think will come out? What are the outcomes for that? Or what do you think they want to review?
So one thing because I've had quite a few conversations with people, and one of the main things is that it's not a big surprise. But what I would say is, what's a surprise to me is that they haven't done this earlier, because the last time they reviewed consolidation was in about 2017, and a lot has changed in the consolidation landscape since then, and just in the world generally.
Oh, yeah.
So that's one of the reasons the FCA has said that they're doing another review, is because of that. And also because apparently whenever they speak to people in the industry, that's what comes up, and that's something that needs to be looked at. So there's that. So for quite a lot of the commentators that I've spoken to have said there should be nothing to fear for most consolidators as long as they're doing the right thing, which is what is said about most regulations, I think. And as to the reasons for why they're doing it, so they haven't confirmed this, but someone I spoke to suggested that it might be something to do with the fact that quite a lot of deals are being pushed through ahead of the budget without necessarily getting change of control approval from the FCA. Because from what I hear, there's a bit of a backlog getting change of control approval. And so they're wanting to get the deals through before the budget, so just sort of pushing them through. FCA has not confirmed that, but that is one thing which people are suggesting is the reason for the review happening now. But it has been several years, as I said, since the FCA last looked at this in 2017, so I personally think it's slightly overdue.
Yeah.
So does one of our contributors, Nick Chikuti. He said maybe it's a case of it being a little too late, but we don't know exactly what they're going to look at, but we wait with bated breath to find out.
Yeah. When you said the thing about it being a little bit too late, I was going to be snarky, but I don't want the FCA to never talk to us again. No, I was going to say, aren't they always kind of late to the party? But again, I don't want them to be mad, so I won't say that, but I would do. But I did wonder with consolidation, like I said, when we first started, it seemed like you were talking about a lot in that space. Has it, but it seems to have slowed down or stagnated slightly?
It does seem to have, but from conversations I've had, there are actually quite a few deals in the background, and it's likely to pick up again.
Okay.
There's also this thing which comes up a lot when we talk about consolidation, which is this mooted consolidation of the consolidators. So some consolidators, if they don't feel, especially if they're private equity backed, if they don't feel they're growing quick enough, they might start trying to buy each other and creating even bigger mega consolidators. So that's something we're sort of keeping an eye on as well.
Okay.
But yeah, the main messages on the consolidation review from most people I've spoken to is that it's nothing to fear if you're doing the right thing. If you're not doing the right thing, then it's something to fear. A wake-up call for buyers.
just like when Consumer Duty happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I suppose one of the worries was that the firms involved in consolidation, were they prioritising sort of commercial needs over client benefits, which is obviously central to the Consumer Duty. And given that how much sort of private equity involvement there's been in and increased sort of activity in this area, are the consumers getting, or the clients getting lost in all of that? And that's maybe why it's timely to do it now.
Yeah, exactly. So we get hundreds of press releases saying, this consolidator's buying this IFA firm every week. So it is still rife. In every press release, the quotes in the press release, they could just be all about the same thing. They say, the reason we're buying this firm is because they are 100%, on the same page in terms of culture. I'm paraphrasing. This is not what they say. And
that person's just retired.
We always put the clients at the heart of our business. It's easy to say, not easy to prove.
Yeah, especially when, I don't know, there's a big movement of people leaving the business straight after. You're like, how true was that?
Yeah, exactly. And I've always found it quite interesting. One of the things about the advice space is when you buy an advice business, essentially what you're buying is the people. Mm-hmm. So if there isn't a genuine culture fit and you don't integrate the businesses within yours well, and in a sort of timely manner, there's a risk that a lot of the advisors will leave, take their clients with them, and then what have you bought? You've literally got nothing because all the assets are gone. And there is this trend of breakaway advisors, it's called. Mm-hmm. So advisors who've been in advice businesses that have been bought by big consolidators
and then they
not really got on with the culture or the vibe in the company.
Yeah. And
decided to break away and set up on their own. Because it's not easy to do, but it's easier to do because you can go in as an appointed representative under a network if you want to, and then you can sort of work towards getting direct authorization. I know quite a few advisors who have done that.
Yeah.
So there is all this consolidation happening at one end of the scale, but at the other end, it seems to be causing this breakaway advisor trend where there's quite a lot of sort of smaller one-man band advice firms launching.
But that just sounds like a nice cycle, though.
Yeah,
because
there's like anything.
People creating businesses, and then there's businesses later on, maybe
sell them.
5-10 years. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. No, it is. I suppose it's like with anything, really. It goes around in a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
So moving on from consolidation talk, mostly because I can't say consolidation anymore. Let's talk about the budget. It's coming up very soon, and there's so much speculation and news just keeps coming at us, mostly the same stuff. But what key areas are financial advisors kind of concerned about or want to be aware of?
Well, it is probably the most anticipated budget that I can remember. It's just building up into a sort of a fever pitch, partly because there's been such a big gap between the election and Labour's first budget, much bigger than normal. And ever since Rachel Reeves said this fabled sort of 22 billion black hole that she desperately wants to fill, there's been lots of speculation rife. Reportedly, she wants to raise about 40 billion in spending cuts and tax rises. So, yes, as you say, in the financial advice space, that's kicked off an awful lot of worry about what that could mean. Basically, the parameters that she set herself is that there are no rises in taxes for working people, so that's defined as income tax, national insurance and VAT. However, there has been a row recently about this speculation that Labour might look to increase employer national insurance contributions, that will be announced in the upcoming budget. Basically, employers pay NIC on all earnings above £175 a week at 13.8%, which is a flat rate.
Right.
And then that's deducted and set aside for HMRC before wages are paid out. It's a moot point as to whether that you can define that as a tax on working people. Most experts and economists have said it kind of is, and it might be a violation of the manifesto promise as a result. But we'll see. That could well be a rise. So specifically, employer national insurance contributions. But in terms of the other ones, it'll be interesting to see which ones she targets and which ones will have the sort of the biggest impact. There's a famous saying which is that the art of taxation consists of plucking the goose to extract the maximum amount of feathers with the minimum amount of hissing. And if you can see what happened with the winter fuel allowance, she almost did the opposite of that. She had a lot of hissing, but probably not very many feathers at the end of the day. And I think from a political point of view, she'll be very, very keen to try and sort of minimise the amount of sort of fuss that it caused. But to answer your question, Kim, the key ones are capital gains tax, inheritance tax, and pensions tax relief. So just to sort of take those quickly in order. So a potential thing that she could do would be to align capital gains tax with income tax. That's quite speculative at the moment, but if she did that, she could raise about 16 billion a year in revenue. That would be a pretty brave thing to do. It would have a pretty devastating effect where clients are expecting to pay, say, 10 or 20% in CGT, and it ends up being 40 or 45% if it's aligned with income tax.
Yeah.
Would be a brave one. There might be some movement. We'll have to see. But certainly, going back to Lois's point about consolidation, a lot of people have been taking action in anticipation of rises in capital gains tax. So I suspect that's probably quite likely. Inheritance tax, this is a hardy perennial. Are they going to raise, or some people want to abolish inheritance tax altogether. Other people want to raise the thresholds. It's a politically awkward thing to do. There is a case for abolishing a rule that's known as the residence nil rate ban, which basically allows people to avoid paying tax on all or part of the value of their home when it's inherited. Okay. So you can use that ban to shield, I think it's £175,000 from tax. It was introduced back in 2017. Costs about $2 billion a year. If there's going to be a change on inheritance tax, it could well be that rather than a raising or a lowering of the bans. Pension tax reliefs, basically all of those who play into private pensions get tax relief on their contributions. Currently, savers receive the tax relief at the same rate as their income tax, but the government might choose to introduce a single flat rate of relief, and that would hit certainly higher earners. So they were suggesting that it might be a flat rate of around sort of 30% rate tax relief this year. That was a speculation earlier this summer, and we haven't heard much since. It's like a lot of these things. There's been a lot of rumours in the ground, but the Treasury have kept very, very tight-lipped about it. All of these things would have an impact on the financial advice sector. All of these things are certainly things that clients I've been calling, certainly the financial advisors I've talked to, clients have been calling them en masse saying, what should I do? What should I do? Should I withdraw money? Should I do this change? What should I do? All speculation at this point, but those would be the key areas.
But I think I saw something this morning that said that, like, even with capital gains tax, if it were to be increased to, let's say, like 39% in 5 years, it won't really, I think it was the Treasury that said it won't really have an effect in terms of filling this black hole, because people will figure out a way to work around that tax. And I feel like that might happen with most of these taxes. If you have a really good financial advisor, a really good, they'll be able to figure out a way to.
There are always loopholes and there are always unintended consequences. And I mean, if we just go back to the winter fuel allowance, there was a recent announcement. The average earnings have I think it's 4.1% was the latest figure. So that will set the figure for the triple lock come next spring. So we know now the inflation has dropped to 1.7%. So if the state pension goes up by 4.1%, you're talking about a more than doubling, more than twice the rate of inflation increase in the state pension. That is estimated to cost an extra 100 million a year in terms of just pension costs alone. So you've got to factor in all of these things, and you balance that off about whatever savings you may get from the winter fuel allowance. So it's all. I was about to say the black hole is a moving target to mix my metaphors horribly, but there we go.
But I don't think that's how physics works.
Yeah.
Why would you pluck a goose that was still alive?
both of his. We could just pick holes in all of his metaphors.
I think this was a French economist from the 18th century, and they did all kinds of weird things back then, particularly in France. So what can you say?
Yeah.
Ask a goose specialist.
Thing where, what's the French dish, which is like a duck's stomach?
Ooh, I don't know.
Like they just feed a duck loads.
Foie gras.
Foie gras.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe, when they were experimenting on that, they also
plucked a few feathers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were like,
True.
Yeah.
I'm very much looking forward to having pizza on budget day.
And that is all.
That's all you have to say
That's
on
your
this.
takeaway from the budget.
I am also, and we're recording another podcast on budget day, so keep tuned for that.
Yes, yeah. More in depth, and actually, instead of speculation, we will have something concrete to work
Put some
from.
flesh on the bones.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's going to be as much change as has been speculated on, or if it's just a case of, Labour saying they're going to do, or sort of creating these speculations so that when things don't happen as much.
Maybe just because it's a new government coming in, people just thought everything would have to change, because the reason why they came in is because people were unhappy with how things were being run previously. But then,
I think there's a well-known political tactic that sometimes happens in local elections where you get a spokesman of the party saying, "Oh no, we're expecting this to be terrible, appalling," and then when it's not as bad as they say, they can then spin it as a win. And you can do something similar here. You can say, "Well, get ready for oodles of tax rises and spending cuts and what have you." And then when it's not as bad as they think, then people, instead of complaining, breathe a sigh of relief.
they're like, well, at least it wasn't that.
Yeah, so
Psychologically clever.
That was actually
We know that, and it would still probably help.
Well, again, look out for that budget podcast where Tom will be hosting. So, and since we did have a bit of a break, I thought we'd talk about the news stories that stood out to both of you in September and October. So I don't know, Lois, do you want to start off with, or Tom, would you like to start with the new?
Well, while Lois is scrolling away, the thing that it's a story that we actually ran about the capacity crunch within the advice sector. Like, how do you get new talent into financial services? How do you increase the awareness of that? At the moment, it's not really on the radar of young people. It's not really on the radar of career advisors. And we know that this is a problem because an awful lot of people are exiting the industry. More and more people will need advice in the future, and the worry is that fewer and fewer people will be able to deliver it. So we actually had a look at sort of some of the initiatives that are trying to address this. Not only sort of trying to address the perception and the reputation that financial advice has, but are actually, properly doing something about it. So we did the CI's Virtual Work Experience Programme with SpringPod, for example. We covered the New Talent Alliance, the Ver Foundation's We Are Change initiative, and Future of Financial Advisor, which is, aligned to money marketing partly. And it was more a sort of, it was a plea for collaboration in this area. I think a lot of firms or initiatives are there, and they're working quite well and coming up with some good ideas, but maybe they should be talking to each other a bit more. We should be collaborating together to come up with answers with all of this. So I'm sort of using this podcast once again to sort of say, if you do have an initiative to attracting new talent into the industry, let us know about it, because we certainly want to do a follow-up on this at some point or another, or maybe some more interviews, some more podcasts about it. That was our September cover issue, and it's and I thought it was really inspiring, some of the things we learnt about and some of the people we spoke to.
Wasn't it October?
No, it was September. Now you've made
Don't correct the editor.
Sorry. I just think it's really interesting. So
no, excuse me, it was October. You're quite right.
Whoa. And I had your back, Tom.
You never do that again.
No.
Before we started working on that cover feature, I had a bit of a chat with Tom Hegarty from M&G.
Yes.
And he was telling me, because he's involved in Future Financial Advisor and the New Talent Alliance as well. And he does a lot of work with like government-funded apprenticeships. Anyway, just one stat that stood out to me. I don't know if you just said it just then, but something like 300,000 advisors there used to be, and now there's about 30,000 or something.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
It's absolutely crazy. Like that's a 90% decrease, isn't it?
Largely due to
regulation and stuff.
RDR coming in, I think, and
a lot of people are like, I don't like this new system, and moved into other things. I think some people even said they moved into like mortgage advising because they just felt it was a better fit for them.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. We had the article opened with a quote that it's sort of an office joke that whenever you interview a financial advisor, how do you get into financial advice? They always say, "Oh, I fell into it."
Yeah.
And it's nearly always because they were doing something adjacent, and then they kind of bit by bit somehow ended up in there. It's never that there was. My ambition from childhood was to become a financial advisor.
Even the ones that I've spoken to where their parents were financial advisors, they resisted.
Yeah.
And then they, like in a roundabout way of, oh, this isn't working for me, this isn't working for me, they finally went, okay, fine. And then they ended up loving it. Or the others that I've talked to, they started working as an admin just because they needed a job out of uni or out of college in a financial advice firm. And then they got more interested, which is, I guess, maybe that is how most people find their careers. But it would be nice for people to understand in the realm of finance, if you understand like, oh, maybe I want to go into investing, but the hours or, I'm not fantastic at maths, that you can do something like financial advice if you're someone who's super personable and likes to develop relationships and have long-term relationships with your clients, then this might be the path for you.
I think there's because there's a is it misconception or misperception?
Misperception.
Or both. That you have to be really good at maths.
Yeah.
Financial advisor. Obviously, it helps if you can do a bit of maths.
Yeah, but
or like
is.
Yeah, exactly. But actually, it's a lot more, as you just said, about relationships with people and being
those soft skills.
A good listener.
And
I do have
Yeah, you have it now.
I found it. So I don't know if it's just my perception, but there seems to be so much people news in the past couple of months. Just it feels like every other story I'm writing is like someone's hired someone or someone stepped down. The biggest that stood out for me in October was True Potential's CEO Daniel Harrison has stepped down and is being replaced by Jerry Mallon from Tesco Bank, which is interesting because obviously Tesco Bank is a bank. Retail, consumer focused.
Yeah.
And I was having a chat the other day with one of my contacts who suggested that this is going to happen in like wealth management, financial advice quite a lot coming in the future, bringing people with quite a lot of customer focus in, potentially as a result of consumer duty and much. No, I'm not saying that financial advice firms without a retail banking CEO can't focus on the customer and haven't been focusing on their customers or clients, but it seems to be a trend to watch out for. More like consumer focused retail banking people coming into the sector. So
yeah, they can bring a different perspective.
Exactly, yeah. We will see if that comes about. Another big story in the past few months has been the CII and the PFS are arguing again.
Once again, it's back. It's back. We can reuse that cover of them going at it.
It's like the story
like a civil
that never
war.
ends.
Yeah.
Every time we think it's buried or gone, it comes back. I'm currently working on a leader column for it.
Yeah.
And I haven't decided yet, but I think I'm
who the winner will be.
There are no winners
I think
here.
We know who the winner's going to be. I just had this anecdote about like an argument I had with my friend at school. I won't go into the details of the argument because I'm going to do that in the leader.
Okay.
But every time I thought we'd put it to bed and it was all fine, she'd bring it back up again. And
that sounds exhausting.
It just reminds me of that. It was a very tiring time.
But why didn't you just leave that friendship?
I did.
Oh, okay.
That was how it ended.
And what lesson do you draw for the...
And that's the moral of the story.
Drop people who tire you.
Yeah.
unless they're your children.
I'll come back to that.
Oh.
But yeah, so the latest thing that seems to have happened is that the CII has put in its own board members as PFS directors again.
Okay,
And
because they did this last time.
From what we're hearing, at least one of the directors who's left the PFS, been pushed out, is not happy about it at all and is considering
Suing?
potentially. It's just a rumour.
Litigation.
Not corroborated, and I'm not saying which one it is, but yeah, no, apparently there's some ruffled feathers. Going back to the goose feathers.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll keep that on. I want to call that litigation watch. We should have a segment.
Might not
about
happen,
that.
and I'm not saying it has happened or who it is, but yeah. And then I suppose the final thing was just how much content we got from our MMI conference in London.
Oh yes.
It's a pretty good newsy conference.
It was really good. Packed room. Lots of people. I was mostly networking because I wasn't on stage that day, so doing a lot of stuff for Future Financial Advisor, which was really great, and also seeing like a really diverse crowd of people. But yeah, you were in the room, and
I particularly enjoyed chairing a panel with 4 big heavy hitters from the tech and
I was
platform
going to say, you had
world.
an extremely charismatic panel.
It was
I
great.
was very jealous. Not that mine wasn't very charismatic as well. Saved.
Yeah, no, it was a really good conversation. We're quite I nearly said interesting again.
fun bunch.
Fun bunch. Quite a exhilarating conversation about whether you should go with whether an advisor should go with best of breed or best in show for their tech stack. So whether they should pick different tech offerings from different providers and put them together in their own tech stack, or whether they should just go with
One
a sort of
package.
And I mean, there isn't a right answer, obviously.
I was just going to say it just depends on the type of person you are, right?
Yeah.
Whether you want to be hands-on like that, or if you're just like...
Yeah, exactly. But I think a key point is it's good for advisors to be able to have the choice of picking their own bespoke technologies, as long as it benefits the end client.
Exactly.
Because the clients are at the heart of their business.
Yeah.
Always.
And Tom, since it was your first MMI, how did you find, basically running the day?
Nah, that puts far too much credit.
You started and you ended it. So
Started and ended. I bookended it, and I
Yeah.
did a few bits and pieces in between. Most of the credit definitely goes to our events team, who did an amazing job putting it on. But yes, no, I sort of like introed and outroed it. I hosted a panel on consumer duty, which is a perennial hot potato. I mean, what was interesting about it is that there's been lots and lots of stuff about consumer duty 1 year on, sort of like how the industry has adapted to it, the implications. But we had a chance to talk about, what it might mean 2, 3, 5 years hence. What are some of the unintended consequences? What still needs to be ironed out a little bit? How do you sort of define best practice in certain areas? How do you sort of account for things like vulnerability? And so I thought it was a really interesting panel. I felt pretty knackered by the end of it.
Yeah, it's a long day.
It's a long day, but I mean that was a tribute to the fact that there was a real buzz in the room. I got to meet a lot of people I'd not met face to face before yet.
Yeah,
some old veteran readers were there as well, which is nice. And then we're doing the whole thing again in Leeds later this month. So yeah, excited for that.
Yeah, we will be heading up quite soon, so that will be fun. And we'll probably update everyone on that in the next podcast. But as it is October is spooky season. So I was trying to find a fun link. So I thought we could talk about spooky financial stories to kind of end this on a lighter note. So I did find one.
Did you?
Again, on
I
Reddit.
could not find one.
Because I don't think anything I've personally been through is like very, very scary.
No,
I think it's just
spooky is the
mundane
wrong- yeah.
run of the mill. But I did find one that I thought was terrifying from a parent's perspective. So basically the headline or the subject line was child wasted 40K, like £40,000, that we gave them for a house deposit. Need some financial and relationship advice.
Wow.
So, their son is 20 and they thought it was a good idea to just give him £40,000. But the dad did tell him to put aside a certain percentage for tax. Went to the son when tax season was coming about and was like, hey, how's the house buying process going? The son was like, I kind of blew it. I'm 20 and you gave me £40,000. And because the dad had said that that was enough for a 25% house deposit in their area.
Wow.
So God only knows where they live. So now the son owes HMRC £3,600 and he's only just started his first job and it's only paying him 26K. Still lives at home. So parents were like, okay, you don't have to pay rent.
That's nice of them.
That's very nice of them.
But I think they were also asking whether they should bail out their son because the dad is clearly wealthy. He said he owns his own business. He's quite well off.
That's always a thing, isn't it? If you're really rich, how much do you give your children?
Yeah. So the dad is like, do I just pay off this tax bill or do I force him to, pull up his bootstraps?
What did he spend the 40 grand on out of it? I think I could probably guess, but
Cocaine.
I don't think they were, because they had to pry certain things out of him. So he also has 5K in credit card debt as well.
It's less than I have.
After a bit of prying. He's 20 though. And yeah, so he's mostly spent on eating out and going on experiences during a time.
well, he's enjoying
when
his youth, isn't he?
he had no job.
Yeah, I can't really talk. I do that too, but not 40K's worth.
Yeah. I think I would be more scared of my parents' reaction to me not having bought a house. Like if that was the intended purpose.
Oh yeah.
They're going to come back at some point and
Yeah, it's
be
not.
like,
You're,
why
you're
are you
not
still
gonna get
living
away
here?
with it.
They should maybe have released the funds at the point at which the contracts were being exchanged.
Exactly. It just seems like there was a lot of missteps in this particular situation.
Yeah.
But yeah. Tom, as a dad, would you?
No, I wouldn't. No, I think it's. I mean, I'm not a wealthy business owner or anything like that. I think how you bring up your child to sort of manage money well and sort of like learn about the value of money and how to manage it responsibly. It's a tricky one. It's a lifelong thing.
Yeah.
I think if you're very wealthy and your son has the perception, oh well, I can use my parents as a cash cow. That's where I always like Warren Buffett's line on this, which is that I'm going to leave my children enough for them to do something, but not enough to do nothing. Which I thought was that's kind of sensible.
Oh, but I want to do nothing.
Well, you can't. So yeah, well, no, I've never had anything that scary.
Yeah.
The only thing that happened to me one time was when I had my first bank account and there was some money in there, and I was withdrawing it. It's when I first became a student. This just demonstrates how financially naive I was. I didn't realise that the number. I was withdrawing money, but the number seemed to be going up. And I realised that it was a minus number.
Yeah.
But I didn't realise. I thought
That you have an
some benefactor
overdraft.
was putting money in the
Yeah.
account for me, and it was going up and up and up. And I thought, this is great, so I can withdraw more money. And eventually I ate my card, and then I realised what had happened.
Oh dear.
And that was a bit silly, but it was nothing like sort of $4,000 or something. I had a very small overdraft limit,
Yeah.
so
If they don't tell you ahead
No.
of giving you an over, I think when you just get a student account,
Mm.
it automatically just gives you an overdraft as well.
Yeah.
but that's the most reckless I've ever been when
Yeah.
it comes to money. I'm quite boring
Mine
otherwise.
are mostly to do with my car. And this
Cars,
story is
yeah.
not going to paint me in a very good light. I was parking in a car park, and instead of pressing the brake, I pressed the accelerator and drove straight into a big concrete post that was holding up the car park, and just completely wrecked the front of my car. With no one else involved and entirely my fault.
Yeah.
I did leave it for a while, but it started to make weird noises, so I took it to a garage for a quote, and they quoted me £1,200.
Oh my God.
I took it to another garage, and they quoted me £900.
Okay, but still.
So I
that's
ran to
not
my dad,
money
and I was like, I can't afford to do this right now, but I do need to drive. And he was like, I'll give you £1,000, but I have to give your sisters £1,000 each as well. So
Fair.
I was like, oh, thank you, that's
Good
very
dad.
kind. And then my mum found another garage which quoted me £200. So then I just had a spare £800.
Well, that's smart.
But it is also crazy how much garages can
That's
do that.
outrageous.
Yeah, you have to kind of shop around.
1,200 versus 200 for the exact same job. Plus, this garage fixed the other side of my car as well at no extra cost.
Yeah.
Because there were some scratches that were not my fault on the other side.
I tried to go to like a different one to the ones that my parents have always gone to since we moved to this country, and then found that I was screwing myself over just by trying to go out on my own and do something because these guys were more trusted. But it is quite crazy how they can just.
So I suppose the
Quote you.
scary part of that was I needed the car. It sounds so spoiled.
Yeah,
I needed my car, but I couldn't afford £1,200, so I asked Daddy.
But it's amazing that you had that support, but there'll be some people, how like there's that thing of why you need to have an emergency savings stash because everyone is maybe 2 like incidents away from just having
Being on the street.
money. Yeah.
I have the other one is about my car as well. So
This one's scarier to me.
and this time I did have a bit of money set aside, but I've just moved house, and the house I'm living in now I'm paying quite a lot more on.
Yeah.
And I just had to put a deposit down, so that money was for that really.
Yeah.
I was at Clapham Junction station, just dropped my friend off to go and get a train, and I was
It's a really crazy place as well.
I couldn't it was a lot of cars around. I backed up to get out of this space to drive away, and in my blind spot, I was backing up and I just heard this crunch, and I was like, oh no. I got out and it was this brand new shiny Tesla with someone in it, like a Tesla Uber. I was like,
oh,
okay, I know you're not supposed to apologise, but I was like, okay, that was very obviously 100% my fault, so I did apologise. And he said to keep it off insurance, you can pay me $550, and I did. And I didn't have the backup money because I just put it on a deposit on my rented house. So that was a bit scary.
that is.
It was more scary how he reacted until he realised that I wasn't an asshole.
Crazy. Yeah. It also if it's an Uber, don't they film everything? Like they have.
Yeah, it was just, there was absolutely no way I was going to argue against it or get away with it or anything. It was very busy. It was like rush hour. Everyone just saw it up.
Oh man.
So it's not spooky or anything, but it was really
That is-
annoying. And it's annoying when it's 100% your fault.
Yeah, and,
And
there's
so
no
that
way to get out of
$550,
it.
I just did not need to be spending that just before I moved into this new house.
Yeah.
Moral of all of this: don't own a car. Particularly not if you live in London. They just cost you a
Also,
huge amount of money.
In my defence, I haven't done anything else to that car other than that in 15 years, so I don't think it's... I'm not a bad driver.
It's
Just
just
a bad
recently
reverser.
things have happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
Those are my main ones.
Yeah.
But I did also used to live in a house that I thought was haunted.
But how do you link that?
Well, we were paying for the house.
And why were we if it was haunted?
I know.
Yeah.
Just to make it a bit spooky.
Yeah, that was. These were all very spooky situations that we just dealt with. And I'm glad that we no longer have to deal with these. Lois, please be careful driving.
Oh, I don't really drive that much anymore.
Okay, good. And Tom, you said you're more responsible with your money.
Yeah, I'm. You can find me on my bike.
And I don't really have any spooky ones apart from, like using the overdraft or the credit card. But that, again, apparently is
What
normal.
a sensible couple of people you are.
Well, my parents just made me scared of debt.
My dad was
and
very good at telling me about
mismanaging.
budgeting and stuff.
Yeah.
I just didn't really listen to him.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I don't, but you have to control that impulsive side of yourself. Yeah. But still a
Okay, I'll
learning curve.
try.
But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me for this episode. I hope you all enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks very much.